The Depsang Plains, northern Ladakh. What is the region all about and what are the issues? Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Aadi Achint. Today, as I just mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Depsang Plains, which is in the northern Ladakh region where the current standoff between the Indian Army and the People's Liberation Army is ongoing. The Depsang Plains is also known as the subsector north, and like elsewhere with China, the LAC here is also disputed. It's not much of a surprise. Now this disputed area, so-called, it's not disputed by us because it's our land, located at an altitude of 17,000 feet and above. It's got a plain flat land where heavy weapons like tanks and other things could be brought about. It has seen two major standoffs before in 2013 and 2015 when the Chinese tried to intrude into our area, set up some tents and stuff like that, but were pushed back because of the diplomatic talks and the local commander who spoke to each other and sorted out the situation. This time, despite the sincere efforts of the Indian side to resolve this particular problem, things aren't getting sorted out and the forces aren't getting disengaged. This probably is because of the fact that the Chinese have come with a particular motive and they want to achieve that motive. Remember one thing, if they don't achieve their targets, they will have to go back with a black face to their own country. The area of the Depsang Plains is located in a very strategic place. On one side, you've got the Siachen Glacier, which is one of the longest running Indian Army operations since 1984. And on the other side, you've got the Chinese putting pressure on the Indian forces. I have certain maps that I have prepared for us to understand this entire area. Let's look at them and understand this area a little better. Here is the first one. There are 3-4 lines that I'd like to show you. One, of course, this is the G219, which is the main Chinese highway. It goes to Kashgar from Tibet, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, to Lhasa. The second line, which is the international border, which all of us are pretty much aware. The third line is this one. This is the one that the Chinese are trying to push across right now, which is called the 1958-59 line. These were the points that the Chinese started putting pressure in 1958-59. It is important for us to note that the Chinese had already reached this area during the time of 1959. When the War of 1962 started, this black line which is going across here is the one where they actually started the war from, and where they actually stopped, which is the line of actual control today, is the blue line that you can see going across right to the bottom of your screen. Now this particular map, just focusing on the northern part of the country, actually tells you a little bit on a broader perspective. Again, the G219, which is the Xinjiang Tibet Road, as I mentioned to you earlier, the LAC, the green line over here shows you the DSDBO or the Dobruk Shiok Dolat Beg Oldie Road. The pink parts that you can see over here, these are areas that are controlled by China. Of course, the Aksai Chin area or Aksai Hind area was taken up by the Chinese before and during the 1962 war, and this part was given up by the Pakistanis to the Chinese in about 1963. It is not all bad news for India, as a matter of fact. The green parts that you can see over here, and if you see the legend on top, it says controlled by India, claimed by China. This, including the state of Arunachal Pradesh, is something that the Chinese claim to be southern Tibet, but it is completely controlled by India. So it's a battle of wits from both the sides to see who blinks first. Now here is another map that I prepared of the region of northern Ladakh where the India-China standoff is currently ongoing. There are 4 major zones where the standoff is currently taking place. One is in the northern Ladakh, which is this area called the Depsang Plains. Second is the Galwan Valley, which is right here. Third is the Gogra Hot Springs, or PP17 as it's known as in army lingo. The fourth one is of course the Spangong So and the Spangur So, which is the small lake at the bottom of your screen. Now the red roads that you can see, as I told you earlier, is the G219. The Chinese have over time built up their connects right up to the areas where today's clashes are actually taking place. So let's start from the bottom of the screen. You can actually see this road going right up to the Pangong So Lake. The second offshoot you can see is going to the Gogra Hot Springs or the Konkala Pass. The third offshoot, starting very close from the Aksai Chin Lake, is going up to the LAC cross point, which is at Galwan Valley, where the entire face-off took place between the Indian Army and the Chinese Army. Now notice one thing very, very clearly. All these places where this road is coming, especially in the region of northern Ladakh, is to the point where the Indian road, which is marked in blue, which is the DSDBO road, is the closest to the LAC. It actually tells you what the Chinese intentions are. The northernmost point over here, as you can see, goes across to the Depsang Plains and to the area of Murgo. We'll discuss all these areas in a little bit detail in the next minute or two. Now this is the area of northern Ladakh shown to you in a little more zoom and focus, you can see the Karakoram Pass and stuff like that over here. This is just to give you an idea of how close the line of actual control runs to the DSDBO road shown here in yellow. Now the first point in the Google Maps that you can see is the Karakoram Pass. It's a strategic pass at an altitude of about 18,000 feet between the border of India and China. With the photograph coming up, I'm sure you can see the vantage that this pass can provide us. The second area that I'd like to show you is the area of Daulat Beg Oldi. Now Daulat Beg Oldi lies near the easternmost point of the Karakoram range in a cold desert region far in the northern part of India, just about 8 to 10 kilometers next to the Chinese border or the line of actual control. Other than the Siachen Glacier military bases, this is India's northernmost point of a military settlement. Daulat Beg Oldi also has one of the world's highest airstrips, which is India's advanced landing ground against the Chinese forces at an altitude about 16,614 feet. The third area that I'd like to show you is the area of Depsang North, which you can see right here. If I just zoom out of the entire area, you'll be able to see how it is close to this LAC point. Now LAC point is the area where the LAC actually crosses down from this LAC point right to LAC 2, which is another point. Now these are not official names, this is something that I've given so that I'm able to make you understand this entire region. Now one of the flashpoints in this area is on both the banks of the Chipchap River. As you can see, there is a settlement of the opposite side here and there is our settlement here. You can clearly see the tire tracks going there and turning back. The next one is the base of Birdsey. This is a forward post of this military area of the Indian Armed Forces, where our forces go up to the patrolling points close to the line of control. The next point I'd like to show you is the Chinese base in a small place called Sumdo. I'm sure you can see the defensive setup done by the Chinese in this entire region. In the photograph here, which is taken at an angle from Google Maps itself, you can see that this area is bang in the open, resulting in a strategic advantage to somebody who can think straight and get this battle in his control. The next place that I'm going to show you is the village of Murgo, which is right here. Now this village of Murgo is pretty strategic in its location. If I may just able to zoom out a little bit. This road is the DSDBO road and this is also known as the Murgo road, which goes towards a place called the Sasela Pass, which is right here actually. Sasela Pass is a high mountain pass in the northern Ladakh region at an altitude of 17,753 feet. It is an ancient summer caravan route from Leh in Ladakh to Yarkand today in China. It also has a road today which is getting fully developed in some time to the Nubra Valley. Nubra Valley is the main connect towards the Siachen Glacier, which is going right to the northern part of the country, which has another standoff with the Pakistani army. Now after having a look at the maps, one thing I'd like to tell you is since the 1962 war, the Chinese have had a strong control over the heights in the Depsong Plains, basically on the eastern edge of Depsang. The western edge of Depsang, as one can very clearly see in the maps that I showed you, connects to the Remo Glacier, which is an extension of the Siachen Glacier connecting into the Pakistanis and a whole another war on that side. The official history of the 1962 war, published by both India and China, clearly states the Chipchap River Valley, which opens into the Depsang Plains, as an offensive route for the Chinese to put pressure on Ladakh. The Sasela Pass that I showed you is a very strategic pass for India, close to the village of Murgo. You can very clearly see in the map that I showed you earlier that they are building up a road to try and put pressure at the points where the DSDBO road is closest to the line of actual control. Sometime in the year of 2015 and 16, India carried out a full-fledged war game, taking into account a possible aggressive Chinese stature, as one can very well see today, and putting a huge amount of focus onto the Depsang Plains. India has also created a separate brigade of soldiers with complete equipment to look after the subsector north, or the area of the Depsang Plains, following the 2013 and 2015 tensions between both the countries. A lot of people actually say that this brigade is one of the most diverse of the Indian Army, with its multiple war, offensive as well as defensive elements which are well thought out and prepared for such a situation. To bolster its defenses in this entire region, the Indian Army has been putting across heavy equipment like tanks and heavy artillery guns, as one would have already seen in a lot of news which is floating around the place. One can see in these images that these tanks are ready and raring to go into action. These are the heavy Indian T-90s, which have a range which is far exceeding to what the Chinese have to throw at us in that region. Although being at such a high altitude, the tanks have still been brought in by both the forces to put pressure on each other. The main aim, as I've mentioned about 3 times in this video, of the Chinese is to put pressure on that DSDBO road in points where the LAC is very close to this road. The Galwan Valley is one such example where, if you watch my video on the Galwan clash, it clearly tells you that there was an observation post that the Chinese wanted to build up in that area to keep an eye on the movements of the Indian Army on the DSDBO road. An article by a Chinese person who's a scholar of Eastern Asian affairs in China at the Stimson Center says that the Chinese look at the Indian infrastructure development very, very seriously, and they believe that putting pressure like this on India would correct New Delhi's approach towards this entire region. For the Chinese, they claim that if India is able to complete its development of its infrastructure in this area, the 1962 war would have been fought in vain. What exactly happened in Depsang, where this standoff actually started up? What happened is that the perception, as we all will know, is starkly different of the line of actual control between both the countries. According to established agreements between both the forces were allowed to go across to patrol towards their side of the line of control as perceived by them. The Chinese were doing it towards our side, and we were going across towards their side and doing our patrolling. This is the same situation which is also continuing at the Pangong Tso between Finger 4 and Finger 8. After the 2017 Doklam standoff, things have gotten a little aggressive in both these regions. But it did not come to a point where the patrols were literally stopped and pushed back. Aggressively, if I may add. It is now in the year of 2020 from the month of May, wherein aggressive posturing by the Chinese has led to the Indian forces to respond in kind. Before I close, I'd like to come back to this map which shows you the Chinese road accessing the various points of dispute between both the countries. One thing that you can very clearly see is the long lines of supply that the Chinese have to use, which is close to about 500 or 600 kilometers before reaching these regions. The second point is the fact that the closest Chinese airbase to this region is about 300 to 500 kilometers far away from this place. It is in Hotan, whereas the Indian Army is very close to the line of control, looking at the various bases which the Indian Army has in this region. One of the biggest advantages Indian air power located in this region, in Leh, Srinagar, Avantipur, so on and so forth, would be able to put a lot of pressure on these Chinese roads if in time of conflict. Whereas that situation from the Chinese towards India would be very, very difficult. One thing one must clearly understand, a war is fought on an army's ability to provide for supplies to its forces which are fighting the battle in the front lines. My last question that I'd asked in the beginning of the video, is the Depsong Plains an advantage to India? Well, during the 1962 war, since the Indian Army was not as prepared to fight in these regions, it became a disadvantage because of the terrain itself. But today, the Indian Army is well prepared, as all of us might know, to take on any aggressive maneuvering by the Chinese forces. The Indian Army has deployed well and in numbers that can ensure complete protection of each and every inch of our land. Thank you for watching my video. Subscribe to my channel, share my videos with your friends, and yes, of course, share a thought for the soldiers standing across in the battle lines today, in the land, sea and the air, once a day, every day. Jai Hind.